Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Decoding the Root Cause of Illness with Medical Intuition, Techniques that Uncover and Disrupt the Spiritual and Energetic Origins of Disease. My name is Stephen Dunn. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and this has been a fantastic exploration really into the root causes of what's upstream from so much that manifests in our body. We've been doing this for some years now, and we're really excited to bring one of the world's pioneers in this area. Her name is Skylar Acamesis. She's a master medical intuitive and is going to help really go deeper into these root causes and see how we can work upstream from diseases and imbalances in the body and really restore our natural health and birthright. So with that said, Skylar, welcome to today's program.
Hi, Stephen. I'm really happy to be here with you all today.
Great. Well, we're going to dive in, and Skylar's going to give us some really powerful insights and practices. And I also want to let everyone know that we're going to have a brand new program with her called Healing the Root Cause of Illness with Medical Intuition that we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. So, Skylar, I always like to start these calls with a bit of your journey as a faculty member and a teacher, and what really propelled you on this path of medical intuition?
To be honest, I think it started before I knew it started. I had an autoimmune disease. I had Hashimoto's underactive thyroid diagnosed when I was 10. And I went from being a very sporty, very outgoing child to really struggling for energy. And I really took the diagnosis to heart. I really thought I was going to be ill for the rest of my life. And it was in the final year of my law degree. I had like a big spiritual awakening, and I started seeing angels and seeing spirit, as it were. And within a year, I'd managed to reverse my autoimmune disease. And then people started asking me for help with theirs. And that was before I had words for what medical intuition was. But I think destiny finds you sometimes, just gives you like a little bit of a kick up the butt. I was very scared of even calling myself a healer in the beginning. Probably lifetimes of persecution. We can go down that rabbit hole afterwards. But I think what gave me the courage and what gave me the faith to believe it was possible was that I just didn't want anyone to suffer that much. I'd also been exposed to young children with disabilities. I worked with young children with autism. I worked in disability centers volunteering a lot with differently abled children, which is another, I think, act of destiny. So I was aware and very, I think, changed by being around people that in theory were born suffering. So it was a question like coming up inside my soul of, how is this fair, and how is disease actually created, and where does it come from? And the answers were coming in my dreams before I even understood answers could come inside dreams. But it started with me addressing my own pain, but also like a really deep desire to help other people address theirs or dissolve theirs.
Let's talk. I'd be curious just about your own dissolving of the Hashimoto's. Like, how did you sort of learn to work upstream and figure out what might have been causes of that before the sort of actual physical manifestation of disease?
Um, when I first started seeing energy, particularly like seeing the aura, I could see that around my throat there was a lot, because it looked like almost like a black tar-like substance. And when I asked my angels or my guides to kind of help me to work with it, um, that is kind of like the beginning of like, baby belief work. They start talking to me in dreams. The first year of like my awakening, I had a lot of past life dreams. I would fall asleep and I didn't even believe in past lives then. I was a very straight-laced law student. So it was a very big shift in personality and identity when I woke up. But they kept showing me like the first lifetime I remembered was literally me out picking herbs and with my family in France. And when I came home, the house had been barred, and it was literally had like some sort of a poster across the door that and then the house was set on fire with my family inside it. And I kept having the dream over and over and over again. And when I would ask, I would wake up like sweating from head to toe, and I would ask like, why? Why am I having this nightmare? Why am I having this experience? And I always like had an echo, kind of like who's saying that back there, but this echo of this is like where you like shut down. This is where you like cut off yourself off from your healing gifts. This is where you like cursed like God, or in the sense like never again. I'm never healing anybody ever again if they're going to hurt my family. Um, so when I was able to, in a sense, forgive myself for the healing gift having harmed the people that I loved the most, which was the distorted belief. Um, I think within 2 or 3 weeks, um, I was started to be in community with people who knew. Like I remember like they'd been there my whole life, you know, Chinese herbalists and things like that. But suddenly I was open to talking with them. Um, and I remember one of them pushing me towards like a plant-based diet. And then I started getting really strong guidance from my angels to take on iodine. Within less than 4 months, it had completely dissolved. And when I went for my blood test to the doctor, I used to have to go for a blood test every 6 months. And they did like an extra 2 or 3 rounds just to make sure it wasn't coming back. But after like 2 or 3 rounds of the blood test, they were like, you don't need to be on the thyroxine anymore. You can go back to normal. But I found it interesting that the change in like the fear of my own gift then led to like people around me who knew it was already healable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was an ancient thing that everything is healable. And that dissolved the belief of nobody can help me. You know, you're really
Mm.
stuck in the diagnosis of it's incurable, it's unhealable. And I think community as well, so much of disease is caused by that loneliness, that isolation, that I'm alone. Suddenly,
Mm.
when you're with people who are like, no, we've got this and we'll solve this. So it was those three things that came together, and it dissolved. And then because I was around other people, especially young people who were struggling with illnesses as well, it kind of became an informal request. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And I was like slowly edging towards my first readings or my first and I would literally say exactly what I say to you, like take what resonates, leave the rest. I'm really just practicing here. But that's how it was really, you know, it went from being like an idea to like being something that I was doing all the time.
Hmm. Well, thanks for sharing that whole history. That really is illuminating. And I want to kind of dive in a little further with this notion of sort of traumatic experiences creating beliefs. And so how is it that a belief from your perception is then out picturing in a disease like Hashimoto's?
I think what I see is that, and I think what I learned much later on, what I see is that we are like our capacity for memory is like a series of holographic images. And when we cannot process or be present with a very strong emotion or energy, right? I call them initiations. Humans call them traumas, but to me, they're all spiritual initiations in some way. When we can't be present with whatever pain is coming up to be transmuted or transformed, we short circuit, our nervous system switches off, and then that hologram is stored with the beliefs, the emotions, very much like being inside a matrix or in a dream where it's like reality. And then it's being played in the unconscious, in the nervous system, in the energy field until it's resolved, because these are massive, um, like initiations are the way that we embody virtues, values, lessons. It's how it goes from being something we intellectualize or spiritually understand to being something that we live. And particularly difficult, challenging initiations, they normally have like the virtue of courage and stuff really deeply embodied in. So they're running, we're creating unconsciously, and we're often creating our body unconsciously because we are identified as the body. So for many lifetimes, we weren't creating so much disease in the body because we believed we were a soul. For the last 300 years or so, we've had this very strong belief from Newtonian physics that we are a body. And when you believe you're a body, you run your energy through your body.
Hmm.
And then when you've got distorted energy running through your body, these old holograms and beliefs, it starts to block the chakras, it starts to block the pranic channels. And the light just can't get through the chakra system to create the new cells and the new atoms the way that it needs to. And once those holograms are reprogrammed, as it were, and you're able to access the powers that were blocked from that image, your body naturally returns to health. Health is your natural state. Disease is the lie. It's just takes a profound amount of courage to face those feelings and to let them to let them move through you instead of to shut down or dissociate.
Hmm. It's great. It was a really illuminating overview. And I like the reframe as initiations versus sort of traumas because it sort of focuses on what's the benefit, but what's the service to our soul for having gone through that in certain ways, or what's the potential benefit at least. What can we take away? And so I'd love for, is it, how important is that in sort of a process of diagnosing something to get to where you find root traumas that are in your field, that are kind of out picturing through your body, and to get to like the understanding of what was the actual initiation intended to produce, or what was the outcome that we could have had? How important is that is in the healing process, do you find?
The wound is more important than the diagnosis, like the original hologram. And my experience with that was that my first three spontaneous or instant healings were through working on traumas and not expecting or aiming for a healing at all. The healing was as a result of the original hologram being discreated and the emotional charge being neutralized. And the intention was not to heal because I didn't understand that that was even possible at that point in time. To me that would have been crazy, you know. It was my experience. It was actually a client that came because she had a hole in her heart and she didn't want to keep having the operation. She was in her late 60s and the next operation would be in her late 80s. And she'd had already two or three of these operations. And we ended up going to a different lifetime where she'd been crucified and she'd had her heart popped with a spear. And that spear had then come back, hole in her heart, come back lifetime after lifetime because it was a death trauma. We go into that as well in the teachings. We go into death doors and how a healthy death is as important as a healthy birth and how to heal that as well. Um, but the ancients knew this. They talk in depth about how important a healthy death is and how an honorable death is important for a healthy future incarnations and things like that. But when we healed the anger and the unforgiveness that she had about the way that she left that lifetime and what happened, the hole in her heart closed when she went for the next surgery. She didn't need the surgery.
Hmm.
So they opened her heart and the hole's gone. And that's when it kind of clicked to me that something was definitely going on. But I hadn't, at that stage, I was like, what, 19, 20 years old? I really hadn't clicked about how there was a direct correlation. To me, it was an indirect correlation. Correlation is not necessarily causation. So I was very like tentative in the steps towards it. But through almost 20 years, I think it's 19 years of practice now, and the wound is more important than the diagnosis. A lot of diagnoses, particularly medical diagnoses, are umbrella terms. They are talking about a collection of symptoms that normally reflect a specific disease. So when you do a scan, particularly a body scan, you'll often be shown things that, you know, the person may not have been tested for, they may not have been looking for. Misdiagnosis is actually common. So a lot of the time I'm telling them to go and ask for specific tests or to go and ask for specific things to be looked at that have never been addressed. I do find the diagnosis in the sense powerful in that it gives people language to wrap around a pain, and language is light in a way. Language gives people a sense of control back. It gives them a sense of empowerment back. Letting them feel seen, particularly if they've been feeling ignored or neglected, is already, it breaks the isolation, which is a powerful step in their healing. And sometimes it is the beginning and the end. Sometimes just knowing what it is from doing a scan is enough to, you know, to complete the illness. I don't know. I've lost count of the number of times I've done a scan and someone thought they were treating an infection when they were really treating a fungal problem, or they thought they were treating a viral issue when it was really a bacterial infection, or they thought they were working with a problem in their gut when it was really a problem in their liver or their hormones. And once they know where the real issue is and they go and get it confirmed, they're able to restore their body to balance. They were just focusing on the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. That's right. It makes a lot of sense. So I like this going back, you sort of first level is getting a diagnosis and having the skills to be able to do that, and then going back into the original wound, and then you're working with the sort of the hologram to sort of dissolve that. You want to say anything more about, so there's, sounds like there's a certain amount of just knowledge or sort of bringing to full consciousness that experience, the initiation slash trauma that was behind it. But what are some of the other things you do to sort of dissolve the energy of that hologram?
The biggest thing that you end up doing, I think, in any kind of healing work, and that's why I think like the power is in the person more than any medium or modality, is you are holding space for that person to really remember who they are and experience their real authentic self. And that's what happens in a moment of, trauma, is that we lose touch with who we are. And since who we are is like our divine self, we lose touch with our ability to connect with our divinity in that moment. So disease comes from a disconnection from self and a disconnection with God. So when we're inside that hologram, we're looking for two things. Number one, what is like the core emotion? And a lot of people have no clue what that emotion is. So sometimes we're muscle testing. If they're completely dissociated, that really helps. Sometimes we're actively using visualization and dialogue to be able to access whether it's a memory or whether it's a particular sensation. But the hologram can be so many things, like especially in a lot of trauma work, we're only working with the inner child. Whereas when you're actually in that divine mind or that zero space consciousness, you don't know what it's going to bring forth. So it can bring forth an aspect of your inner child. It can bring forth an ancestral wound. It can bring forth something from the collective consciousness, like a genocide or what's it called, a war, or a particular like plague, like COVID, for example. It regularly surprises me to this day, which is why I think it's so important to go with like beginner's mind and allow the body and the hologram and the 0 point field, as it were, to speak and to tell you what's going on instead of projecting your own. Especially humans, when we get into the ideas about belief, there are such strong currents in the collective consciousness, particularly about particular diseases, that it's very easy to get distracted by what the collective is doing instead of getting really present with what's going on inside the individual. Mm-hmm. So you have
There's
to really
almost like
focus.
a field of fear around like cancer or something, and then we get kind of sucked into that versus like being fully aware of what's unique to us.
There's a field of fear around the body, which I find fascinating. And Eckhart Tolle talks about it when he talks about the pain body. Most people are afraid of their own bodies. And we normally have very difficult relationships with our own bodies for various reasons, whether it's health or whether it's beauty standards or whether it's, cultural expectations or physical trauma in this particular life. But there's a lot of beliefs inside the body, as it were, and a lot of people believe that's all they are on top of that too. So they especially if they've experienced an accident or a trauma in this life, or they were born that way, they've often got a lot of unprocessed feelings towards the body itself, a lot of like belief the body is guilty or hurting them, or and that's very strong in the collective consciousness, especially with all the beliefs they had about DNA and genes being like out of our control and permanent. So you very much have to unplug from the collective consciousness and really be present with what's going on within that particular person. Because yeah, around cancer, AIDS, COVID, vaccines, there's really strong currents, like not superficial at all, to the extent that I've had multiple clients. I think I've the 6 or 7 people I worked with cancer this year, all of them expressed, and I literally had to teach them how to create a bullshit field, because so many people were trying to pull them into the collective consciousness, including like medical practitioners, but just like friends and family, around, it's gonna come back, or you're not gonna stay better. And it was manifesting as empathy, but it was really a certainty, designed to trigger the recurrence of something, because they just believe that's the only way it could happen. So absolutely, you have to be very careful with the collective consciousness.
I want to ask about, we've talked a little bit more about the personal karmic backstory and somewhat about the collective conscious right now, but you also do work around the ancestral traumas and how those get passed down in lineages. How do you diagnose when that might be operative in a disease condition, and how to get back to the roots if it wasn't in your particular soul?
You have the stories of every, like the thousands of people who created you. Like, you are the love of thousands, right? You have all of their stories within you, just like you have all of the codes in your DNA. You also have all of their stories inside your DNA. And there's 2 ways it comes forth. One is that it's obvious in your lineage. For example, narcissism runs in your family, or addiction runs in your family, or cancer runs in your family, or Alzheimer's runs in your family, or hormonal problems, or thyroid issues. So it becomes obvious that you may be embodying and working through that archetype in the wounded healer now, but it did not begin with you. And part of why you chose that family to incarnate into is because they were a resonance match for the stories your soul was unable to unlock, right? And then the other way, I think there's three ways. I said two ways, but I think the other way is that you can, especially if you're a woman, like through childbirth and pregnancy, you actually inherit the genes from your partner when you're carrying their children, because you have all your kids' DNA and your partner's DNA. So it's not necessarily in your lineage when you're born, but it's in your lineage when you carry the children of that family line. And then you have to, they'll often come and speak to you or through you about dissolving particular illnesses, and not letting them come forward. And then the other is you're born with it, which was the first way that it really came into my awareness. My best friend growing up had spina bifida. And when I asked why that was, I had the dream literally two nights after. I was really young. I think I was 14, 15 at the time. I didn't understand the dream until years later, but I had the dream of being in battle with him, and he was crushed by one of those giant carts that pulled people out of the battlefield because he was hiding under bodies. And he was rescued. I basically carried him home, but the injury was like his part of his vow in that lifetime to never go to battle again. It was what was protecting him in every incarnation from ever having to murder another human being. And that was really, really strong. And when I asked why that came through, so sometimes we're born with it because something that moved us, like really transformed us, um, created a distortion, right? We don't know how to stand against something through our values. So our body speaks for us. It says no when we can't say no to specific things.
Yeah.
Um,
You have quite. I love keep asking you questions, and I also want to give some time to. I know you're going to do a scan for me and then an experiential, so I think now would be a good time to dive into some of those aspects of what we're covering today. So, yeah, I'm
okay.
open to whatever scan you want to do with me as a demonstration, and yeah, let's go from there.
Okay, I'll just do a quick scan. What I do is I just pop up and up into like the white light, like crater, and then I ask for a scan of you, and then I'll tell you what I see. Just take what resonates, leave the rest. Okay. Um, okay, I'm just gonna pop up and have a look. Okay, so the first thing that they're taking me to is your heart. And they're showing me, I think you're actually doing work on this already. You're doing work to kind of clear up around your circulation. Um, and there's a lot of work in your liver going on as well. Um, they're immediately also taking me like to your talu chakra on the back of your, like on the back of your throat. And they're showing me like working to um balance your hormones. And they're showing me like particularly like you're working on your pituitary gland. They're taking me like they're taking me to shoulders as well, and they're showing me like a reducing inflammation in the shoulders. They're showing me you already do work with specific plants and with specific herbs, and I can see like there's quite a few plants and plant teachers around you as well, um, all helping you with that. And there's a lot of gosh, they keep putting my hands on your heart. There's a lot of heartbreak, particularly in the male side of your family, and like a lot of bottled emotions, like a complete dissociation from feelings. Um, they're actually showing me potentially undiagnosed, some like Asperger's, like 3 or 4 generations back, like almost like the inability to speak
Hmm.
about what they feel at all, because it was so heavily shut down. And then they're showing me there's like a male figure standing behind you, and they're showing me like a lot of like a lot of unprocessed rage on that side. Gene wise, they're showing me like loneliness, like the loneliness gene, depression gene. and potential okay, so they're showing me two things. They showed me the gene for like mild insulin resistance, and then they showed me it can potentially lead to future dementia, but that it's not been activated. And they're showing me that you've already done a lot of work. I'm actually getting like your guides are like doing a happy dance and saying you do a lot of work around your diet, and you do a lot of work around like your beliefs. You're like, you know, to make sure you're going along a specific path. Um, the last thing they're showing me is a lot of worry, and it's the worry that's affecting your digestion, is what they're showing me. And they're really showing me like working with your spleen and your liver meridian to kind of balance those out. But that's what I'm picking up.
Wow, there's a lot. That's a lot of information really quickly, and it's interesting. My father line more goes back in the direction of Ireland, and I have had some things that have been more about some of the what it meant to be kind of an oppressed people in many ways, and that was not something I was as a cognitive of. I was like, oh, it's great to be Irish or something, but it's like, oh, they really were subjugated in many ways, and that that there was some real deprivation, fear, survival fears, and other things in that lineage that I've had to go into in different ways. So it's interesting you bring that up, and yeah, and anyway, there's some other layers that I could speak to, and but I'm curious, like just for the sort of general audience, too, is like so you're clearly sort of scanning quite quickly. So you're just kind of like opening, and do you have like a team of guides you're working with then to sort of like illuminate different patterns very quickly like that?
Okay, so let's go one step at a time. It's different for everybody. I know very talented people who can scan people with their empath skills, or everybody has like clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, clairaudience. For me, it mostly comes through a mix of visions and feelings. And then I hear words kind of being thrown at me in the background. Um, but yeah, for me, it comes through very quickly. And I tend to see like the body light up first, and then the bits that need work, they're kind of dark. And then I zoom in to those particular bits. And as I zoom in, they kind of light up almost like cinema screens,
Hmm.
and they're playing different stories. It's kind of hard for me to verbalize all the images that I see because it moves very, very quickly. Um, and yeah, I have a team of angels. I do have a team of guides as well. That normally are like, I don't know, I think they're talking to your angels and guides and stuff at the same time. I'm very, very careful. I don't like going into people's bodies or fields because the body can think you're an invader as well. So I kind of like to get the energy through without me having to be diving into your organs or your aura. Very respectful of space. But yeah, for me, it's images, words, and it's like moving pictures.
And how do you differentiate between, so there's some things that you were talking about, the lineage that was feeding into it. So is that just information coming in, or does that actually show up differently in terms of what you're seeing?
It shows up differently. So, when I slowed down, it was literally because I saw crossroads. So for me, if your whole body lights up, and that tells me it's in your DNA. So we're talking ancestral, we're talking family line, which is where we kind of went into like Great Depression type energy. Um, oh, yeah, there's warrior type stuff too. But when I see both, so that's normally when I see an organ of the body at the same time as seeing the whole body light up, that tells me that there's specific aspects of this life, or things that are active and ongoing that are also triggering this particular hologram at the same time. If I just see the body light up, I know it's genetic. If I see it light up with like a closed door, then that lets me know that whilst the gene is there, it's not active.
Hmm.
And that's part of what we go into as well, is how to work with either a dormant gene, dissolving genes, or creating genes and things like that as well. And also like altering the DNA, if the environment is, you know, working with it in a non-positive way, which can sometimes happen.
Wow, there's a lot of fascinating directions that can go. So you're actually, so you're feeling just working psychically, energetically, you can shift the actual genetic structure for somebody's whole body.
Absolutely. I think people underestimate what energy is. Energy is all that is. You can absolutely shift your genes with your energy. You can, I think for me, it really became real during pregnancy with my two sons, is that like there, I made a heart, I made a brain. That's how much your body has the blueprint for how to create consciousness, never mind. yourself. Your body is genuinely able to create anything that you're able to hold the energy for. What I find is that most people, and this is part of one of the, like, I suppose one of the most controversial things I teach as a medical intuitive, is that clearing the trauma or the original, it's not enough. It just takes you back to like 0 point. But unless you have like almost like a guiding star, or a destiny, or a really powerful vision, um, you tend to go back or recreate the same thing over and over and over again, because that's all you know how to do. um you need that vision, you need something powerful to live for. You need to be creating something that really lights you up. um but your body can absolutely, and this is like, I kid you not, like especially with like Dr. Bruce Lipton and stuff, when I first started teaching this stuff, it seemed like completely crazy. And then it became very scientifically evident that we absolutely alter our genes. Like you switch off
Mhm.
300 disease causing genes just by switching over to a plant-based diet. If you actually read something like Molecules of Emotion, she goes into depth into the science of how you shift your physiology just through your thoughts and your emotions, like the biochemistry of anger versus the biochemistry of jealousy versus the biochemistry of love. These are physiological experiences. They are not just metaphysical experiences. And then we go into um, being conscious that it really all comes back to energy. And you can absolutely shift DNA. You can absolutely um, alter who you are by altering the energy that you're holding inside your being.
Great. Really powerful insights. Do you want to do the energetic attunement for everyone? Just guide people in a process now that where they can experience some of this for themselves?
It's pretty interesting with this one, because one of the reasons I love doing this attunement, it's short and sweet, but most of the spiritual teachers or light beings that I know, they've known since they were kids that they were healers, and they're just like scared of their own power in that way. So it's a very beautiful activation. So short and sweet, guys. I just want you to get comfortable wherever you are, because the nervous system needs to be relaxed for this one, okay? If you can, pop one hand on your heart and one hand on your gut for me, because you have three centers for reprogramming your DNA. One is in your pituitary, one is in your heart center, and one is like right behind your belly button inside your gut. And what they do is they change your DNA throughout your whole body when you change the DNA inside these three master cells. Okay. So I want you to close your eyes for me, and I want you to imagine you're in that bubble of beautiful white light. And no fear can enter the white light, and nothing inside the white light can be harmed or hurt. We're just going to call in all the beings that unconditionally love you and give them permission to divinely intercede on your behalf. They help you to heal you. Taking a moment, just let go of control, particularly those of you that have been wrestling with a disease or have been in pain or dealing with a chronic thing. Just giving control over to your higher power for a minute, just whatever it may be. There we go. And we're just going to command the seed of light that's commanded to activate your medical intuitive gene, your healer gene, to regulate your nervous system and to reconnect you to your higher power. Just drop into your heart, your belly, and right into the center of your brain, these three little points of light just glowing in the dark. As these three little drops of light start getting brighter and brighter and brighter, you see them expanding out, sending codes, attunements, pure health frequency into your nervous system, into your body, into your very being, expanding out in all directions of time and returning to you multiplied. And you feel that memory of unconditional health lighting up. Activating your mind, your soul, your very being. Just reminding you that unconditional health is who you are. It's who we all are. It's where we come from. It's where we're going. And I'm just getting told to bring in the virtue of freedom as well. So we're just going to bring in freedom for all of those of you who are feeling trapped. Trapped in your body or your mind or a disease. Just going to bring in freedom. And power. I'm just going to illuminate your healer archetype so that you can go from wounded healer to illuminate healer. So you can remember the wound is the beginning, not the end. There we go. And then we're going to expand that health all the way back down your ancestral line, right back to Creator, because Creator is one of your ancestors, and all the way forward to Creator, because that is what we're becoming. Last but not least, we're just going to unplug to all the forms in the collective consciousness where we're giving our power away, whether it's pharmaceuticals or medicine or other people or our body. We're just going to allow our guides and those beings to just come in and just cut your cords to anything draining your body of power, to anything draining you of your health, anywhere where you've picked up other people's energies or diseases or patterns. And we're just going to imagine it becoming soft where it was hard and flowing out of your body deep into God's hands. Anyone that you're supporting or caretaking that may be ill or sick, we're just going to plug them straight into God's heart and remind them of unconditional health. When you're ready, you're just going to wriggle your fingers and toes, take a nice big stretch, and open your eyes.
Nice. Particularly somehow that just when you're kind of linking the lineage back to creator and then all the way back around to creator. I like that sense of creating a sacred circle with that. That's really I found that particular piece was beautiful. So so to build on what we're doing right there, I know a lot of your core teachings have to do with illness as a sacred messenger, and so I'm just invite you to reflect a little bit more on how you can kind of move from sort of just trying to eradicate a disease to really taking in the sacred message and making that something that you are sort of realigning your life in some way with.
It's quite new. It's quite new. It's really like a blink in humanity for diseases to be seen as scientific medical concepts that are outside of our control. For most of history, we've understood them as conscious beings, whether it was framing them as imbalances in shamanic work, like being out of balance with our environment, or whether it was as demonic forces. They absolutely are messengers. And one of the things I find most emotive, it can bring me to tears in minutes, to be honest, is how often the things that we are the most afraid of. And I think illness is one of the things people dread the most. Can be the things that bring us the greatest level of freedom if we show up for it. The body does not lie. And that's one of the reasons I love it so much, because there's parts of the mind that can lie. It's got various defense systems, but the body responds to who we really are in truth. And so many of us have no idea who we are, particularly in different seasons of our lives. Like we're still identified with who we were at 17 or 20, or desperately trying to go back to who we were when we were the happiest, instead of being fully present with who we are now, and how we can fully bring love and power from that place of presence, as opposed to something that's, doesn't really exist anymore. The body really shows up and gives voice to who we are now and what we need to become everything that we are. And disease becomes a sacred messenger in that format, because where we're not allowing ourselves to fully exist and express and be free, that is where the body creates disease, because that is what creates disconnection from self and disconnection from God, from life. What I found the most interesting in healing work in general is that most people are very comfortable healing their relationship with the perpetrator or the person that hurt them, particularly spiritual people. They've normally forgiven the person who hurt them or the situation that hurt them, but they've never reconnected with themselves in the process. They never took the time to give themselves what they really needed, or to even to identify what needs were never met at the core of their being. And that's what leaves those needs being unmet by the universe or the external environment in like repeated chronic manifestations. But illness, it's genuinely brought me to my knees with some of the messages that came through. I think the first time it really hit me was when I was working with somebody that had a series of miscarriages, and they came to me to heal their fertility issues, and it was actually around being in abusive, toxic relationships. And the message was, simple but clear, which is that you are unconditionally worthy of love. And it was a mistake inside the womb where she'd really believed that she should have been a boy, and she wasn't lovable unless she could be a boy, right? And then it was just so simple. And I think it was 3 months later, I got the message that not only had she moved on, but she was on the way to having her first child. But it really hit me so hard that people come to work on their health. It's not just for us, it's for children as well. The number of people that drag their kids in, and then when you're it's not about the child at all, it's always about the family and the parents. And then the disease in the child dissolves because the parent was willing to face the energy that was being produced in the environment in the home, and it was creating, like, the child was holding. It just never fails to shock me how powerful messenger disease is and how relentless it is. Disease taught me to respect truth above all things, even when I didn't like it. Like, genuinely, one of the things I've had to work so hard on healing is people pleasing. I'm such a people pleaser. And disease, it doesn't care in that sense about what people think or what people want. It just allows you to be in your truth. And it voices the pain you can't necessarily verbalize or express, because you may not believe most people don't believe they deserve to be themselves, it just doesn't mess around. And one of the things that it also taught me is, like, disease is progressive. It doesn't give you a lot of time. So it also really taught me to collapse time in that sense. Like, a lot of people believe it has to take a long time to heal. And when you're dealing with like a terminal illness, and someone has like a couple of weeks or a couple of months maximum, unless they really face their truth, otherwise their soul no longer wants to be here. It's disease doesn't mess around. It's kind of like it shakes you by the shoulders and it says, you get this one life. Are you really gonna claim it? Are you gonna decide what your soul knew before you were even born, that you wanted this, you wanted to be here, you wanted to claim this human version of you as a human being, or are we not doing this anymore? It's that kind of ultimatum that I find makes transformation happen very quickly.
Hmm. Well, that's I like seeing the body as sort of a rigorous truth teller in that way, and I also just want there's one other area we said we would cover. I just want to ask about, which is how to sort of work on a little bit of understanding the energetic timeline that behind illness before it becomes chronic, and so where we can kind of work at the early stages, so we're not in that time pressed end of desperate kind of end stage disease, but like really working upstream.
There's three prongs because trauma is kind of three pronged around sacred geometry. It's quite interesting in that way. Um, Chronic disease can be a reflection of chronic trauma. And that's one of the hardest ones to address, is that the person is still in it. Particularly common around domestic violence, and around things like poverty, and where it's like generational, and the person is not responding to a past event at all. It's not what I call like past life PTSD, or something that happened in their childhood. They're still living it, and they're often in denial about it. So that's one of the reasons that illness can become chronic and cumulative as well. The other is that abuse often happens, particularly when it's chronic in childhood, over and over and over again. People rarely have an act of abuse happen once. So, for example, your mother or father may have screamed at you over and over again. It's quite common for like an abuser to be shouting at you, leave the room, and then 20 minutes later come back and shout at you some more. So the belief becomes the abuser's coming back, and then the disease is protection from the abuse. So it's like the disease comes back every single time something stressful happens. The disease comes back as a way to protect you from this unconscious trigger of abuse. And then finally, around like protection. So the body responds to the hologram, not to real life. This is where they start talking about hypervigilance and nervous system regulation. And that's why I work with the hologram versus working just with the body. I do recommend body regulating exercises. I'm a sucker for breath work and meditation, etc. But your subconscious, it's really recreating that hologram up to 30 million times per second. So
Wow.
you cannot outthink an emotion that's being generated to keep you safe by your unconscious mind. You must deconstruct the emotion that created it, and that's really important. Is that a lot of people work on the beliefs, but they don't work on the feelings. Emotions come first. You feel before you can think.
Hmm.
You form belief constructs around feelings. Emotions are energy. Energy comes before everything. And most people are working on the beliefs without deconstructing the energy. And beliefs are not an accurate representation of an energy system at all sometimes. So for example, I've had a lot of people work on relentlessly on resentment, because most of the books on cancer say it's resentment, and then you actually get in there to the core energy and it's disappointment, right? I've had a lot of people work on being unlovable, and then you get right down there, like into the like the core of it, and it's jealousy. The core wound is often before we consciously recognize what it was. And I think it's interesting that Gaber Mate talks about this. He put words to what I'd been seeing in my healing sessions for years, is that someone will say, I experienced like sexual assault, and he will say, well, the predator chooses you because he knew that you were unprotected. The real trauma is you being undefended by your family. Right? So often the trauma that creates the illness is already there years before, and not often, like always there years before the disease manifests or the chronic illness manifests. So that's what would be the final one, is really being able to get to the core of what's really happening, instead of being stuck in the beliefs wrapped around the feeling. And I literally had someone less than 2 weeks ago who was really struggling with blisters around her genital organs. And when we did the healing process, there was sexual abuse in her childhood, and the rage that she was projecting at that perpetrator was actually being transferred onto her body and onto her partner. And when we were able to be with the rage, because she was terrified of her own rage, because she thought it would turn her into an abuser, or it would like make her a terrible person. That's how children, often feel about their protective emotions. Um, Within like, I think it was 48 hours, these, blisters she's been struggling with for years just dissolved. So, and so did her angry outbursts, right? Simultaneously connected. Um, but the body's very protective. Chronic things that come back are normally a sign that something is either ongoing or that you're responding to the hologram being recreated faster than your body can respond to your actual environment.
Well, Skylar, you are a revelation to talk with. You have so many layers of depth of understanding, and it's really fascinating to just open up like how you work in this multidimensional way. So I want to spend some time now on the course that you're going to be offering, which is an amazing opportunity to learn from you and go to these root causes and help to shift them. So Skylar's agreed to teach this brand new program for Shift. It's called Healing the Root Cause of Illness with Medical Intuition, Body Scanning, Timeline Shifting, and Spiritual Reconnection to Accelerate Healing for Yourself and Others. You can see that at the URL healtherootcausecourse.com, healtherootcausecourse.com. It's a 7-week program. You don't have to have a background in medical intuition or really any specific background because she's going to be taking you step by step through the process of understanding how to work in this way. So, Skylar, I'd love for you to share in your own words some of your intentions for what people will come away with, and then we can go through the course and give some highlights of what's coming.
My intention is really to help as many people as possible shift from feeling powerless around their health and their loved one's health to feeling in control and feeling empowered to work with disease. Because I think a lot of healers are afraid of working with disease, and that's a real shame because they'd be amazing at it.
Module 1 is called Body Scanning and Reading. Uncover the truth behind your body symptoms.
Yeah, that's very much, I'm going to teach you guys to do what you saw me do with Stephen in your own way. That's when you're learning to really see, sense, or feel the person's organs, the person's aura. You're going to build a really strong intuitive library. That's basically the images or feelings that your non-physical team is going to show you to give you information about what is happening in the person's energy that's blocking their health from fully manifesting. It's a lot of fun practicing readings and then learning how to do disease readings and body scans. It's probably one of my favorite things to teach.
Module 2, Body Beliefs and Systemic Programming, Recode Illness at its Core.
That's where we go into like looking at the collective consciousness, human beliefs about illnesses versus metaphysical realities about illness. That's where we look at your unconscious beliefs and your soul beliefs versus what you think you believe, which are completely different things. And we also look at like what I mean by what you think you believe. Most people think they believe one thing, and their body, especially if it's got an illness, believes a completely different thing. So I'll teach you how to work on a subconscious level to really change beliefs that have become your identity as opposed to, what your mind thinks.
Module 3, Miracles, Disease, and Disconnection, Restore the Blueprint for Healing.
So this is where we're going to go into like dialoguing with the hologram and the different aspects of you that have been wounded, where you become disconnected from self and disconnected from source, and the ways that you've abandoned your energy and your power, and then that vacuum has created space for disease to manifest instead. And dissociation, disconnection are huge. Loneliness is worse than smoking. I think it's 16 cigarettes a day. So I'm going to teach you guys how to identify disconnection and how to really create reconnection to the self and reconnection to all that is, so that you can, get the person unconsciously creating health without having to resort to illness as a form of protection, but also like blocking overwhelm.
Great. Module 4, Chronic Illness and Relapse, Decode Why Healing Doesn't Last.
Yeah, so we're kind of going to bust some myths here around like people not wanting to heal and around getting raw about why some people are still living in chronic injustice and how to, really help them to create recovery in real time when they're in difficult or toxic situations. That's the one where I'm going to teach you how to break chronic cycles in, like, that's often karmic cycles go in cycles of 3, 6, and 9. So I'm going to teach you time loop healing so that you can literally break the cycles and you can see the why they're creating those chronic illnesses in the cycles that they are, both in themselves and in their family lineage. And we're really going to address how to get out of toxic or difficult situations and deal with denial, which is probably the biggest block to healing chronic illness that there ever was.
Module 5, pain is a portal. Translate symptoms into soul wisdom.
I think that's a big one because most people that come to you are going to come with either chronic pain or with a symptom that is pain, right? They may not call it pain, but it is. And you're going to have to be able to hear what they're like, this kind of like the disease whispering element. You're going to be able to have to get to the raw truth. I call it like working with the law of truth to really break down what's really going on. I'm going to basically teach you how to make people cry. This is how you make people cry. When people feel seen, um, the walls start to crack, and the pain starts to dissolve. I'm also going to teach you how to use pain as a way of getting back to the original wound, how where it is in the body and the voices that are contained in it will normally take you straight back to where you need to go to be able to get it to disappear.
Module 6, ancestral and DNA healing. Rewrite your cellular inheritance.
That I'm going to teach you to understand the stories that carried you. Like, there's a reason you chose the family that you're in. It's one of the biggest power struggles I think we have, karmically and dharmically, is why we chose the initiations that we chose, the people that we chose, both for better or worse. And getting really present with what's there, like acceptance. I think people struggle with this a lot when it comes to ancestors, is the acceptance of what's there versus anger at what's there. And to really like bring forgiveness and redemption and mercy into some really stuck places so that we can like bring in karmic absolution and grace and get you tapped into your ancestral gifts and healing powers instead of just tapped into ancestral trauma.
And finally, Module 7, future medicine and timeline healing. Create new bodies through destiny.
So that's the bit where we touched on in the interview about how if there's not a strong enough vision, people perish. One of the biggest causes of chronic illness is people not having a reason to live or a desire to live anymore. So unless you have a strong vision or a strong dream or a strong legacy, you know, life has challenges. You need something to get you out of bed in the morning. And normally that thing is your destiny. And it needs to not just excite you, but, really light up the world. You are not, we're not just brought here for ourselves. We're brought here for the lights that we're capable of being for humanity. And I think we forget that. And one of the most important parts of healing a disease is remembering that you matter. Nihilism did a terrible job. So did all the wars, First World War, Second World War, the wars that are going on right now. They really create a strong belief in the collective consciousness that life has no meaning because they waste life. And life has such profound meaning. You have such profound purpose. So we really deconstruct the belief that things don't matter, they have no meaning, like trauma happens for no reason. And we really create profound meaning and purpose and legacy. So your body has something to grow towards. And you're not trying to go back. See, most people are trying to go back to their body, like back to their pre-baby body or back to before their body got sick. There is no going back. Okay, once you've had an illness or a broken heart, you're going to have a new body or a new heart or a new frame of consciousness, but who you were before, it no longer exists. You have to be open to connecting with who you are now.
Well, what a fascinating program and a really important subject to cover in depth, because it's not just about identifying healing diseases. It's really about how we orient all of our life coming from our deeper purpose and being able to take the messages that come through our body and turn those into a more purposeful life. So really beautiful. Again, the whole program is laid out in detail at healtherootcausecourse.com, healtherootcausecourse.com. In addition to the 7 2-hour class sessions, you're also going to have time to ask your questions. There's going to be live demonstrations and exercises. There'll be recordings, both video and audio for every session, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There's weekly exercises that you can do at home. There's Facebook community to support you and deepen your sense of community around this work, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page at healtherootcausecourse.com, you'll see a number of extra bonus Skylar's been very generous with. There's a full guided audio meditation called the Medical Intuitive Activation. You want to share anything about that bonus?
We go quite a bit deeper into the collective consciousness. That one is really about taking your wounded healer into the illuminated healer from an archetypal perspective. All of us healers choose that archetype, and we start with a wound, right? You can see it in very powerful healers, whether it's me with my Hashimoto's, or Louise Hay with her cancer, or Wayne Dyer with his, or Doreen Virtue with her addictions. We all have a core physical wound that sets us out on that journey to remember our own divinity and who we really are, and that God is the source of all things. And then there's the illumination where the wound becomes the wisdom, right? The wound becomes the wholeness. The wound comes back full circle to the wisdom that was lost. So we really, in that meditation, we go into depth into illuminating that archetype so that you can complete the story instead of like staying stuck in the shadow of it.
Great bonus, just that by itself. Then there's a whole daily gratitude journal, which is a 199-page PDF, really empowering you to do that kind of deep gratitude practice regularly. And then finally, we have a special bonus that's available just for folks who sign up by midnight tonight. This is our way to encourage you to go to the page at healtherootcausecourse.com and really tune in with your own inner knowing. And if you get the signal to move forward, you're going to get a special bonus. There's a video masterclass with Skyler called Clearing Chronic Pain. You want to share a little bit more about that special bonus?
This one is one of my favorites. So the master classes contain like a bunch of codes and downloads. It's got ancestral healings and clearings. It's got the muscle testing for different beliefs that create chronic pain. It's got a bunch of stuff for identifying the core patterns that create chronic pain and releasing them. It's got a bunch of instant healings. It's got loads of scans and readings for people that are actively on there resolving their own stuff. It's You guys are going to see this inside the program as well. I can't help with the Q&As. We just kind of flow. So there's a lot of play and a lot of fun as well. But it's really beautiful to see people have instant healings and to see them have these aha moments, particularly around chronic pain they've been in for a long time. It's a really, really beautiful little masterclass.
Really, what a beautiful extra bonus and great reason to sign up now. So we've kept the investment for this program very accessible, even though it's a lot of value. It's just 3 payments of $128, so you save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. Course is going to start August 12th and run Tuesdays at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern. And even if you can't make those live times, you can still get the full value with the transcripts and the community and the recordings as well. So there's some great testimonials from Skylar's students and clients and people who have experienced her work. So those are all on the page as well. And so you're clearly in really good, experienced hands, and you're going to learn a lot that is clearly going to be beneficial for your path and potentially others as well. So that's the program. And Skylar, thank you for creating this program. Anything that's still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering joining you?
The biggest block in general is people believing they're not ready, or they have to be like really experienced healers to work with disease. And the reality is there's no order of difficulty in miracles. And you know if you're made for this work. If you've ever said that you're a healer, you know that disease is just like anything else, that it can be dissolved, discreated, undone. And Stephen is absolutely right. It's so much bigger than you, the amount of suffering that you can end just by giving yourself permission to shine. So yeah, if you feel called, we would love to have you.
Beautiful. Well, Skylar, it's been a delight to be with you and learn from you. And again, if you'd like to go further into her course, you can do so. It's called Healing the Root Cause of Illness with Medical Intuition, Body Scanning, Timeline Shifting, and Spiritual Reconnection to Accelerate Healing for Yourself and Others. And it's all at healtherootcausecourse.com, and you'll get that special extra bonus when you sign up by midnight tonight, which is all about clearing chronic pain. So thank you so much, Skylar, and thank you all for joining. Many blessings.
Stephen, thank you so much.